Shit, we're stuck in a forest. Spoiler alert, it's located close to the east coast of a small Japanese island. Let alone that fact, it doesn't look good. As it goes, blindly moving forward without a goal or common sense often leads back to a man either smart or incredibly stupid. There you go. Now in moments like these, you're privileged to some questions. Questions like, is this supposed to be fun? Why keep on moving? What's here to prove? Is it time to panic yet? Is there a snack at the end? And what the hell do those signs mean? Most importantly, what is this? Okay, it seems we're totally lost. So for God's sake, let's start over in a different forest. This is not Japan. It smells more like southern Germany. And this here is a chapel in the middle of the woods, which might look a bit odd, since it's believed they are designed for a species with two opposable thumbs to hold a sing-along sheet, and not for the average forest-shitting animal. For the moment, let's believe all of this makes sense later. Stepping out of that forest, and not on that butterfly, God forbid, we find 3 houses on a hill. No matter how you spin the camera, it stays what it is. A small and rather dull outpost in the middle of nowhere. For some reason, this place also features a chapel. Moreover, one of them houses even features an own altar, maybe for the quick pray in between. Yes, it certainly seems religion's strong in remote areas like these. One figures spending the first childhood years right here in between nothing but farming gear, some cattle, and obscure symbols of ritualized traditions must lead to peculiar perspectives, with one insight clear in focus. Life cannot stop here. It has to go places. Like to this chapel. Don't get scared, in southern Germany, they follow you along. Let's focus on the new surroundings. Another tiny village and some more nature. A nice place to spend the teenage years, fair enough. Then again, a boy bred in the wild looks for a better solution to nature's pressing issues. Like finally getting out of the metaphorical forest and setting foot on some civilized concrete. There, as you do, you pick a plank of wood on wheels and jump over various things in interesting ways. That's what they call skateboarding. You might have heard about it. It's the sport where you get the most creative in hurting yourself. This just might be as stupid as it sounds. In skateboarding, practice makes good, but only confidence makes perfect. The best way to not get hurt is to trust your skills. The skills you gain by being persistent. Stubborn, really, as it takes you ages before you get even the basics right. At least in some cases. Every once in a while, you break a leg. Fortunately, not being able to walk for a period of time bears the natural potential to train your brain with video games. Depending on the injury or how addicted you actually got in the meantime, at some point the question might arise where the coolest characters from your favorite games actually come from. That place is likely to be Japan, with its kick-ass pop culture. Regarding comic books alone, this Asian nation provides you with material that makes a young boy's eyes wet, next to something else sometimes. Better yet, in Japan it seems socially totally acceptable and okay for all ages to like all that stuff, which is the exciting, yet perfect opposite of what goes on in the tiny German farm town you might happen to be trapped in. In order to avoid this sad truth, you create a different reality in which your nerdy fantasies are an actual gift to society. Which feels great, but still you're bound to find out how a tolerant society gets established in the first place. So you study up on this bizarre history and culture, while, to make things worse, also minding to learn the language. However, when it comes to Japan, trying to find sense in any of these areas is a job for the bloody-minded alone. Speaking of which, skateboarders find obscure things beautiful, like dirty places with tiny rusty rails. So you find those folks at odd places like furniture outlets or supermarkets after closing hours, lurking around back alleys where dogs tend to go to when they die, or minding their own business on plain parking lots. It appears skateboarders find beauty where they find a challenge. So, as long as you have your feet on a board and that board on some good solid ground, all you need is some imagination and you're at peace naturally. There's a handy way to test that idea. It's called long-distance skateboarding. The concept is simple. Grab a board, pick a goal, and go for it. The one thing to remember is to stay on roads, preferably. If you don't want to get lost in the woods for half the distance. There's boards especially designed for long distances. This here is not a good example, but everything works as long as it rolls. Putting nasty conditions and severe muscle pain aside, this form of travel is fun and rewarding. You're completely independent, allowing you to thoroughly explore and really get in touch with the new environments. Now, with all that in mind, why not grab a board, a backpack, a tent, a sleeping bag, spread your wings and leave your comfort zone for, let's say, roughly 6 weeks, and move your ass over to Japan already. Finally, here's the chance to face your beliefs and maybe even get to know more about yourself. Which, in this case, is myself. Sorry about the face, it's a long flight. Call me Note. I'm sitting in this train from the airport, which conveniently provides a perfect time frame for me to explain some basic and boring facts about Japan to you. So let's get started. Here's the 4 biggest of the overall 6,000 islands that make up Japan. There's Hokkaido in the north, then there's the big one in the middle, Honshu. Then there's Shikoku, the smallest and least inhabited of the 4. And let's not forget Kyushu, right here. There's about 126 million mostly Japanese people who live on these islands, with lots of them clustered in vast metropolitan areas. Tokyo, for example, is the biggest metropolitan area of the world, housing about 35 million people alone. There's also the Kansai region around Osaka, but we'll get to that later. Given my nature, I'm not gonna start in a fancy place like Tokyo. I'm gonna start in the most distant and rural area the train can take me to. So I end up in a place called Aomori. Alright then, nice to still have you on board. What comes next? Alright. So, this town's called Aomori, Shin Aomori. This is where I start. And that's where I stayed last night, the first night here in Japan. And today I'm gonna hopefully find the way to Hirosaki, where there's a kind of an autumn festival. It's roughly 40 kilometers from here. And let's see if it's doable. I think it is. Hell yeah, it's doable. It doesn't take long until I make my first discovery, which is skateboarding with a heavy backpack on your back means that the tiniest stones can throw you off board quite easily. Easy come, easy go. I was looking forward to skating some idyllic country roads, but then I end up with this expressway. Now, at this point it's fair to tell you that it's not my plan to skate through Japan all in all. The actual plan is that there is no plan. There's no reservation or a mapped out route. Where to go next I have to decide on the fly as I go. But eventually, good things will happen with your feet on a rolling plank of wood, right? Good. Keeping that in mind. Oh, is that a shortcut? No shortcut. Anyway, now my language skills are still clumsy at best, but I make it a challenge to start every conversation in Japanese. Partly because my skateboarding brain is masochistic at times, and partly because I don't really have a choice anyway, as most Japanese people just don't bother with other languages. Here it comes.
Hirosaki, ikitai desu.
Good job. Let's tell everyone I want to go to Hirosaki. Maybe, in return, someone tells me when and where I can leave this expressway for good, so I can finally enjoy some landscapes. As my own attempts keep bringing me to places like this. Or this. Hold on, is that a vending machine in the middle of nowhere? Anyway, the road stays what it is, and I reluctantly decide on staying on it. So let's agree on skipping these boring parts and jump right into the city. And here we are. Hirosaki.
今度は弘前市の都心や小さい村を見てやろう。それに美しい風景や温泉の話があります。またね。